Y'all, this episode was a lot. I have been debating with people about this episode since it premiered last night. I mean, like, real deal back-to-back debates and borderline arguments with people about this episode. I feel like nobody gets where I'm coming from, but maybe y'all will. So you know what? Let's just get right on into it. Let's talk about this episode of Insecure Season 4, Episode 5. Alright, so let's just talk about the major things that happened in this episode. The biggest thing being this big blow up with Issa and Molly. I don't think anybody was surprised that it happened. We all knew it was coming. We didn't know what would spur it. We didn't know what would happen when they did blow up, but we knew it was coming eventually. This episode makes it clear how if you don't communicate with people at the moment that it happens or right after the second occurrence happens, that things just get worse. Issa and Molly have made it very clear that if you continue to have issues with people and you never take the time to talk about it, all it does is fester. It never goes away. It continues to build up and build up and build up and build up until eventually it boils over and now you have a big mess. And this is exactly what happened. So this episode made it very clear for me that I can no longer take anybody's side in this whole Molly and Issa situation. In my past, reviews, I guess I never really took Molly's side, but I kind of was leaning more on Molly's side. I felt like I could relate to why she was upset, and I feel like she's getting a bad rep on social media. Like, for some reason, everybody on social media just hates Molly. Nobody can see in any type of way how she's not this terrible friend, or how she, no one understands why she's upset in this equation. I just don't understand it, because while I don't think that Molly is perfect, while I don't think that Molly doesn't have her faults, while I don't think Molly isn't contributing to the fact that this friendship is ending, we can't just put it all on Molly. And whether people want to admit it or not, she's very valid in her feelings towards Issa. At least I feel like it is. Like I said, I'm going to try not to take sides, because truthfully, both parties are in fault for how they ended up here. Not everybody is in fault in this episode, but there are tons of situations that contributed to what happened in this episode. So while, let's just throw out a name, while this episode may not be Issa's fault in any way, that doesn't mean that something that Issa did in the past didn't contribute to how they got here, if that makes sense. If you never take time to clear the air and dead things, they will just continue to sit there until life forces you to talk about it. Often when life forces you to talk about it, it's never in a calm or constructive way. It's in a way that is going to lead with cursing people out, insults, fights, and possibly people running out of your event screaming that somebody has a gun. Let's be clear. Let's just break it on down. So last week, Issa, even though she wasn't really being a good friend to Molly, asked Molly to help her by, connecting her to Andrew to find a headliner for her event. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, which I'll link below, I understand why Molly didn't help Issa, but I don't think that that was the best decision. I think if that's your friend, even if you're having a spat right now, you should always help your friend. But Molly made it very clear that she wanted to set boundaries between her relationships and her friendships. I didn't really understand that correlation, but let's just think about Molly. We never have seen Molly in a relationship. Molly has said herself she usually doesn't make it this far in a relationship. So I think she was just truly trying to save her relationship, even if what the reason she gave didn't make sense. That was the reason she gave, and she is well in her rights to feel the way she felt and to set the boundaries she wants to set. She made it clear that's not what she wanted Issa to do. Somehow Issa is able to get a headliner, and Molly is so happy for her. Like, what I don't understand is everybody being on social media saying, oh, Molly came in wanting Issa's event to go bad and she wasn't being supportive. But all I saw in this episode was Molly show up to her friend, even though her friend isn't fooling with her right now. She brought her food because she knew she was hungry. She gave nothing but praise and props to her, not only to her face, but to when she was talking to Andrew. I felt like she was really making an effort to be supportive, to show Issa that she's there for her, and to just kind of clear the air. Because when they were dancing together, it seemed like they were just going to let bygones be bygones and move on. I truly believe that Molly went to that event with every intention of just solely being a supportive friend and being there for Issa. Because at the end of the day, they are friends. Even if she wasn't there for her technically with helping her get the headliner, she was there in a way that she felt she could be, you know? And unfortunately, she was greeted at the end of it, finding out that the boundaries she had set for her boyfriend and her friend were crossed. Now, this is the debate I've been having with people, is people don't feel like Issa was wrong for using Nathan to get to Andrew. Now, Molly met Andrew because of Issa. Technically, Issa knew Andrew first, even though I think they met Andrew at the same time, but technically because she knew Nathan first, Issa brought Andrew into the fold, if you will. But Andrew is Molly's boyfriend. That is their relationship. Molly established that she wanted a boundary in that relationship. Whether I think it's crazy, whether Issa thinks it's crazy, whether you think it's crazy, that's a boundary we set for ourselves. We all are entitled to have our boundaries, and we all are entitled to those boundaries, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. There are boundaries, and Molly set that boundary with Issa. And Issa, in my opinion, violated that boundary by going behind Issa's back. Now, Molly did say, I didn't want to be the one to blur those lines, but she made it clear that she didn't want them to be crossed, period. And whether Issa went through Andrew or through Nathan, she still crossed that boundary. Point blank, period. If your friend tells you, I don't want this, I want to set this boundary, and you do it anyway, you disrespected her and her boundaries, period. And I think people just need to think about how they would feel if they were in that situation. If you're dating a guy and you tell your friend, I want to have boundaries between you and my boyfriend, even if you think it's crazy, she's your friend and she doesn't like it. So you're, just because you feel like you deserve to have a headliner and this is a big event for you, I get it, I understand, but that was not your decision to make. Well, it was her decision to make, and the decision she made was, what I have going on with this block party is more important than your feelings and your boundaries. Now, I totally get it. It was a simple ask and ended up working out. Andrew didn't feel any type of way. You know, everything was peaches and cream. If Andrew would have never slipped up and told Molly that they connected them, it never would have been an issue. They probably would have continued on to grow in their friendship, and it wouldn't have been anything. But I think the issue with Molly is that she felt like a boundary had been crossed and there had been a disrespect. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I do think Issa did cross that boundary. The fault for me that came with Molly is I don't think that she should have reacted as big as she did. But at the same time, this is what I said earlier. You can't let small things continue to pile up, because then small things become big things. This was not that big of a deal at this moment. But when you add all of the things that Molly was already upset and hurt about, you can't blame her for it eventually boiling over and getting upset. I do think that she should have taken it to another day and time. You know, Issa was in a professional event, things were going well. She could have tabled it for later. But at the same time, when you're upset, sometimes it happens. And in Molly's defense, and I know it always seems like I'm defending Molly, I mean, she's been trying to talk to Issa, and Issa has been blowing her off. So who was to say that if Molly wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna let this go for now and just call Issa tomorrow, that Issa wouldn't have been blowing her off then, and she never would have been able to get her feelings across, and then the same cycle would have continues of her people being mad and not talking about it, people being mad and not talking about it. I think they needed this blow up to get it all out in the open. Now, could this mean the end of their friendship? Yes. But it also can mean the saving of their friendship, because sometimes you got to have a blow up to get things out so you can let it go. And I think that's what they did here. But as far as the debaters on Twitter, I can't put all of this blame on just solely Molly. They both have been very bad friends to each other. I think the way Molly reacted today was, it was too much. She overreacted. It might have been a little bit selfish if you think about it, because she could have put her feelings aside so that Issa could continue to have a good event. But I get why she's upset. She felt like boundaries were crossed, and she felt like this was already the cherry on top of the bad friends Sunday that Issa has been making this entire season. What happens after this is going to be the true test of their friendship, because friends argue all the time. We've seen them have blow-ups on this show numerous times. They have one at least every season. So now it's going to be the question of, do I care enough about this friendship to try to resolve what happened after this blow-up, or is this blow-up really the end and I'm okay with it? I think they can move past this. I think, you know, like I said, both parties are wrong, and if they can just both accept that they've been wrong in how they're handling their friendships, they can move on. But if it's going to continue to be either Issa is wrong or Molly is wrong, then they're never going to solve anything. I told y'all from the very beginning I didn't like her, I don't trust her, and they didn't need to be friends. But guess who also told us that?
Molly.
Molly told her it was going to be messy, and look what it is.
It's messy.
So basically, this whole condolences, her and Lawrence broke up, and she thought that was a valid reason to just ghost the person that she's been doing business with months before their event. Really, bitch? So obviously we need to get the full backstory on this whole Lawrence and Condola breakup. Like, maybe, you know, Lawrence broke up with Condola because he told her that he's still in love with Issa, and that's why she can't be around Issa, because that bothers her. But you're supposed to be a professional. Y'all were working together in a business relationship, so you're just gonna drop all of your business stuff because you mad about a guy? I really thought she was gonna come with a whole story of, I found out that you and Lawrence was doing secret meetups, or, you know, blah blah blah. Like, I really thought she was gonna actually come with something valid, but this woman literally looked straight in Issa's face and said, oh, Lawrence didn't tell you we broke up? One, no, he didn't. Two, what does that have to do with anything? Like, you was all for us being mature and still continuing to work together and be friends when you and Lawrence was still kikiing it up and having a good time. But then as soon as y'all break up, you dump me like you dumped him. How does that work? I told y'all from the beginning that it was going to be a mess, and look what it was. But I guess we have to wait and see what really happened with Lawrence to know. Maybe we'll understand why she did that, but I just don't see any situation in this circumstance that would validate just ghosting somebody. Sorry, boo-boo, that's not cool. And I hope, Issa, when you finally do get it together and you do other block parties or other events, that you find another person to work with, because if anything, not only is it wrong, it is very unprofessional. Overall, it was a really good episode. Really quickly, you know, I love what they're doing with Tiffany. I feel like we're going to actually get a bigger storyline of it later, but I can see that they're preparing it to be a discussion about, you know, like postpartum depression and dealing with, you know, changes that happen after you have a baby. So I love that they're tackling that, and I'm not excited because it's kind of sad, but interested to see how they're going to bring it out into the story and what this is going to mean for, you know, Tiffany's character and for her marriage with Derek. And Kelly is the funniest person ever, so I hope we get some more stuff from her, especially in that British accent. Shout out to all the cameos they had in this episode. They had Amine, they had Vince Staples perform, they had Sir perform. Let's just give kudos to the fact that Insecure is able to put so much into only 30 minutes. We've had like 3 fallouts in this one episode, 2 reconciliations, a breakup, we dealing with postpartum depression. We have so much that happened just in this one episode. You gotta clap it up for the things that they're able to do in just 30 minutes. So that wraps up today's review. Thank you so much for tuning in. I always love watching the show and talking about the show with you. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the episode, or what you thought of this review, or who you think is in the wrong with this Molly and Issa thing. I was actually really surprised that Lawrence didn't come to the block party. So let me know in the comments what you thought of Lawrence not being there, what you think he's doing, and what this whole story could possibly be with him and Condola. Love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in as always, and I will see you in the next review video. Bye guys.